All right, hell yeah. So we're going to look at a few spins and kind of how to spin and then keep surfing. So this wave is pretty small, and so it's really easy to get kicked out. And so, but hey, we're doing a pretty good job. We're able to spin and then stay in this wave. Even if I have to go all the way to the other side and come back, we're able to do that. So I'm just going to show you all these clips all the way through, and then we can analyze them. I think this is the last one. And so that spin right there is going to be kind of the bread and butter. It's like the one that I know how to do. And so we're going to also try to put terminology to these spins. And then look to see, like, there's one way that I do it harder, and we're going to take a look at that. All right, so I guess we got one more. So yeah, the being able to spin off this wave and just maintain is just a good skill. And so, but it's the entry waves for this video. It's the entry waves that I want to talk about. All right, so hell yeah. So that's going to be pretty much all the clips. All right, so let's roll back to the beginning. Okay, hell yeah. So this entry move is probably one of the easiest things to do. And so, and let's talk about kind of setup. I'm going to challenge all the other R1ers out there to start paddling or offside, just because it's so useful for so many different things. But anyway, and so this is going to be the traditional side to enter the wave in, where you're over, next to the wave. And let's say we were surfing. So this is a move that we do early, and this is going to be just a shoulder turn. So let's pretend that we did catch this surf and we are surfing. Surfing the shoulder, the wave's going to push you to the shoulder a lot easier. And that's because the main portion of the wave is three-dimensional. It's like a pyramid, and it's going to push you off sideways. It's going to either drop you into the trough, it's going to kick you off the back. But if you're right on the top of it and centered, it's a very unstable balance point. You're going to get pushed to one side or the other. So you can just imagine if we caught this and we're just surfing on the shoulder right here, the easiest thing to do is use this current. And so we're going to use this current to nose our boat into that. This current's going to take our nose this way. And if we angle in, I'm just going to say the front and back, the nose, and then the back of the boat. Anyway, the back of the boat is going to kind of stay put, and we're just going to do a rotation. And because the side or the shoulder of a wave is fairly flat in here, there's nothing really to kick you off. You don't have all this water coming in, going vertical, and then dropping off a pyramid on the way back out. It's the dropping off, if you are on top of the wave, it's the dropping off that pyramid that just kind of kicks you off. You have to overcome the gravity of like a teeter-totter going the opposite direction. And with his shoulder, you even have kind of water, that's kind of going downstream. You have a smaller hydraulic. But because the gradient is so flat in here, it really easily captures you. And so if you do a shoulder spin, this is the easiest spin to do. All right, so let's take a look at the setup. So the nose is going to, let's watch this once at least. Hell yeah. And then so that's it. So with this shoulder turn, let's see if I was able to, yeah, actually, so this is the first one up. I'm just making these videos for me, honestly, because I just want to go back to this wave and be like, well, I've done a shoulder turn on this wave over here, and shoulder turns can be done on repeat. And so I'm going to edge towards the shoulder. I'm going to set in a deep pry, and yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Oh, this is interesting. I almost need to get more forward momentum. So almost like I'm exiting the shoulder. So right there I just do like one turn, and then I'm just kind of drifting in. And so that's going to be the tip number one, is that do I have driving momentum while I'm setting up the trick? Because if I have downward momentum into the trough while I'm doing my pry, then then that's going to prevent me from just getting kicked off. So right here, the spin is up against the pile. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I can improve upon even on this. I can paddle in more tactfully, and then there's some rocks in here, you know what I mean? But we're still way away from these bumper rocks. And so there's still, as I paddle in, I'm just trying to mentalize kind of how I could get a little bit more forward momentum, and then do like right here the last stroke. You know what I mean? So just keep my pry going, keep my pry kind of angled here, and then just do one more to kind of get down into the trough and turn. Because then that will make this pry deeper in the trough. And if I'm doing the pry as the boat's moving this direction, I mean, I can angle the boat now like super good because of the modifications that we've made. But see how I'm doing the pry on the way back up. And so it's just a little bit slower. And what happens is the R1 boats, even currently with kind of the design that I have, there's a lot that gets hung up in the waves that's just not forgiving. Like all of this now, you know, is kind of locked in. So here's the wave, and you can still imagine it like a pyramid, and now we're getting surfed, you know, back down and around. And so that's what I refer to. I think the easiest way to think of it, especially when rafting, because there's a lot to think about, is like, hey, this is just kind of a big smiley face. You know, you're going to be surfing this smile back and forth. Now, again, another way to look at it is the main portion of this wave is a pyramid, and so you're surfing around that pyramid shape just because gravity, you know what I mean? You're the heaviest thing. It's hard for the boat to get on top of that pyramid, so it's going to go around it easier than it is, you know, going up and over it. All right, hell yeah. So that's kind of the first thing that I'm noticing is I'm not able to spin this all the way around. So the next time out, I'm going to set up this shoulder turn, and I should just be able to whoop that thing around. And the shoulder turn is one of the easier ones. Let's see. Maybe not. Not necessarily. Because I'm going into this shoulder turn on this side, facing... No, never mind. Let's see. So there's two things going on here. So one of my terms is... I'm going to say this is a low-sided shoulder turn. The reason is if I pause right here, now this is a shoulder turn. Let's say I'm just surfing and now I'm on this side. Then it's just easy to just ram my boat. And this is the side that I would want to use that forward momentum. So, you know what I mean? And, you know, again, these videos are just more for me. But if I do, and we'll talk about what a low side turn is. So if I do this low side shoulder turn, I can give a forward paddle right here and give a little bit extra juice. So now we have that trajectory going to this corner. I could throw in a little half stroke before laying on that. So I could jump over here, do a half stroke, and then lean in and then pry. And so there's a couple options here. I could go in on this side, which we talked about, and take a few more strokes over to this corner, then transition. But this transition is actually well timed because as I'm rolling into the trough, and this is so fascinating. So anyway, and I think this is the only way I really want to make these videos until I'm just totally solid of the physics, is because this is so cool because there's so much going on here. One of the things that I notice right away is when I transition from here to there, see how the boat just shoves down into the trough? And so that means that this low side turn is, that is fundamentally why it's so good. That's one of the aspects. There's a few aspects why a low-sided turn. So let's talk what a low-sided turn is. If I was already over here into this spot, and I'm surfing... And what happens that I've seen a lot with the other R1ers that are surfing, no one in particular, but what happens, and even me, what happens is it's too easy just to be surfing and then you're just static. Like you're surfing, but you're just holding a static position, and then what happens is you want to go to do a turn, and sometimes you'll just get kicked off and pieced out. And so if this is my static position, and I want to set up a turn, let's say a shoulder turn, what I want to do is I want to take a forward paddle stroke. I want to drive into the trough. I want to have a little bit of momentum down this trough and then execute the pry. And I'm gonna drive down into this trough. I'm gonna have an angle established where this portion of the boat, the front of my boat, is gonna pick up this current and then start, turning. That's gonna act as the lever. I'm at the back of the boat prying, so that's going to be an equal and opposite lever where this, but that's the other thing with the high rockered boat. It's not just, hey, this is just ramming into current no more. But anyway, so this is going to be your standard turn. I'm going to be on this side of the boat. I'm going to turn on the way that I'm prying. So if I'm just surfing here, I'm going to be prying on this direction. That means that I can do a turn this direction. The shoulder's over here. It's going to be a shoulder turn. And so I'm just going to pry and then try to do this turn. And we've talked about why there's some elements of this turn. It's not deep in the trough. This portion is a high portion of the wave. It's really hard to get into this pocket anyway. And so I'm just instantly met with the kind of the face of that wave. And so when I do this turn, I'm just turning the boat up against that wave, and it's hard to rotate that all the way around. All right, so the big portion of this video is this clip. This is what I want to get to, because that body rotation, I've only done that once, and I just kind of I thought about it, you know what I mean, like what I wanted to do. I wanted to, and this is a low-sided turn, so there's a lot going on. I'm paddling down the low side. I'm switching over to this side to set up the pry. I'm prying, and then and in this particular instance, the boat is rotating this way, and I'm gonna rotate with the boat. And so I've already thought this through, is that I'm laying on this pry, and then I'm going to I don't even know. Oh, and then I know the paddle is going to be up here, and then I need to. Oh, this is interesting. So there it is. The paddle goes. This portion of the paddle goes up over my head. And so that's going to be the secret sauce on this one. So when I jump to this side and do the pry, I have to spin with, the boat is spinning this way. I also have to spin this way. So let's see me spin that way. I spin that way right there. And then I'm just kind of focusing on what the paddle's doing. Since I am prying from the back of the boat all the way a sweep to the front of the boat, and the boat's doing a 180. Now this was the front of the boat, the paddle's at the front, but we just did a 180, so this is the back of the boat. So this paddle is already in the pry position, and so what I want to do is leave it there. I need to get this hand lower, and so that's where I'm going to switch that hand. So I'm going to switch that hand, and then have this paddle. And yeah, I just kind of grab it low. So that might be, but I do switch that other hand. So let's watch this once full speed, maybe a couple times full speed. Pry, paddle switch, and now let's kind of break it down. So the paddle's at the front of the boat. We did a 180. The front of the boat's the back of the boat. I want the blade to be right here. I want to be prying off it at some point, but not until I switch my body around. And then so I'm going to get that hand down. I think once I establish this hand down, I can start establishing a pry, and then I'm going to roll this hand up. And And there's so many R1 moves that do not grab the T grip. You know what I mean? I think once you have it established, but this grip is going to be perfect for like, hey, let's get there, a few fractions of a second faster. If not 1 full second. It might be 1 full second to actually grab that T grip. And so, hell yeah. And it's just really hard to grab that T grip just instantaneously. So hell yeah. All right, so that does that one. We're going to go back to this first one. This was the shoulder turn with a pry. And we were wondering why we couldn't just flip it all the way around. But I was also wondering if I did flip this around, where would I want to be? And that's what got me confused. Because like, hey, when I start this, I'm on that side. And then let's do the turn that doesn't go. And what side am I on? I'm on that side but going backwards. Because a portion of this video is going to be talking about maybe entering going backwards. And that's going to be useful. And so let's actually get to that clip. Well, no, it's this one. This one I enter backwards. See how I enter backwards? And then do that. So this was actually the first clip. So the first clip is this shoulder turn, but now it's a shoulder turn that didn't go very far. It didn't go all the way around. So the shoulder turn kind of got hung up like at a 45 on that pyramid, on that wave. And so now this whole boat wants to set up a new turn. It wants to set up, and this turn would be classified as a high side turn up against the pile. If I was facing the other direction and I was on that same side, my pry would be back here. My boat's going that way. I'm going from the shoulder to the pile, and so I'm going to be turning up against the pile. So kind of doing that smiley face. Now, all I have to do is just a forward stroke here, and that's all I'm actually thinking about. I don't even think of this as a reverse pry off the front of the boat. I'm just like, hey, I'm just going to do a forward stroke, where a reverse pry off the front would be jam it in and then pry it around, which is the same position as like facing the other direction and doing a pry off my hip. I'm going to physically wedge the paddle up against the outer portion of the boat and then pry it, where this is just a forward paddle stroke. So that's kind of interesting, because even like right here, well, no, and then I guess none of my pries are up against the boat for these, because these 180 turns are just going to be sweeps. And so to set this up, this was the shoulder turn. I'm going to do a sweep, which is essentially just a backstroke. It's just a backstroke out to the side. But then when I set this one up, I'm essentially in the driving position going that way. Like my body's switched, but that doesn't matter. Like when it comes to R1, the most important thing is that your mass is, situated. And because I'm now going backwards, I've already known to get my knees up against the front thwart. So that's going to be the most important. Because when we go, if I was sitting right here, I would have all my weight on that thwart. I would have no weight on the front. Like your boat's going to do horrible when you're like leaning up against the front. It's going to be way more unstable. It's kind of like an unstable balance point when you're just driving all that weight up into the trough. So this gets my weight back to where the pile is. This is even though I'm backwards, this is the same position as being forward, sitting right here. And then a pry would be a pry off the, and I could do this is where also, shout out to our runners, if you're able to start doing backward strokes, and then so start doing backward strokes where you actually kneel up against the front thwart, and then my MO for my paddling tutorials has always been pry first and then take a paddle stroke. If you're at a dead stop, put your paddle in the pry position. Do 2 pries. Do like 1 pry, 2 pry, and then take a forward stroke. So if I was trying to practice backwards paddling from this position from a dead stop, I would put my paddle blade right up against that side of the boat that I'm on, and I would take a 2 pries. And they might just feel like sweeps off the front of the boat, but still, like you can do 2, half-powered pry strokes, and then you're going to take your forward stroke. And if you're going backwards, that's going to be a backward stroke. So you're going to pry off the bow twice and then take a backward stroke. That is how you would maneuver if you were at a dead stop. And so, hell yeah. And so all the fundamentals of being right here are the same. They're just backwards. So if I wanted to set this turn up, and if I was sitting right here, this turn's very easy. I'm just driving down into the trough and then prying off the back of the boat. And let's just see what we do. All I did was a forward paddle stroke. Now, because of that, this turn wasn't that great. Like when I am right here, actually that was pretty good. Because like right here, I take this backward paddle stroke to drive down the trough. So I at least get like 1 driven down. I'm loading up the boat right here. I'm already on the diagonal, and I'm going to pry the bow of the boat, which is now just a forward stroke. And so technically, I should be able to whoop this thing around. I just have to focus more on getting that paddle blade up here and do a strong sweep. And even trying to get more up my knees up against there, just really dive for this front end, because what I can see from this is all this is going to hit and stop, where if I get my body up over this front thwart and then start prying from, or doing that draw from this sweep, bow sweep from that point, it's going to free up a lot of that rotation, and that rotation is just going to keep rotating and slicing. And instead of just hitting, like right there, it hits a dead stop. Hell yeah. And that's where I'm just like, I don't care if this video is 2 hours long, because when I go to the wave, this wave is 2 hours away from me. I don't live in this town, and I want to maximize my time there. What happens when you do like anything with R1 is that you're just going to fall into the same traps of just doing the same thing over again. So there's a chance that what you're doing might not be the best thing, or you don't even know what you're doing, or you don't know how to expand upon it. You know what I mean? There's always like one point where you're just like, like this is where I'm getting kicked out, or this is where I'm doing a half turn, this is where this is happening, and it's hard to figure out like what else I could do, and then when could I do it. All right, so hell yeah. So even this, like this is a pile turn. There is no reason that we shouldn't just be able to flip all the way around. So let's take a look at another pile turn. And then, because even though this one is a low-sided pile turn, I'm entering on this low side. And the only reason to do that is to drive momentum down the trough. The fact that I even get this 1 stroke in, and this is the easiest way to get sucked into a hole, is to be on the outside of the hole. Is the easiest way to get like kind of spun. Like it's actually really difficult to get surfed across and actually establish a surf from this outside position. It's way easier to paddle on the other side, have the boat out into the easier shoulder water, and then get kind of sucked in on that tube. But this shoulder turn is the easiest way to actually attain, some, like if you're getting kicked to the side of a surf, the easiest way to attain to get back into that surf is to do these outside I'm going to call this shoulder, I guess it's not a shoulder turn. We were saying the shoulder turn was this direction, but I would just call this shoulder paddling. So if you if you are getting exited from a wave and you have to paddle back in, it's going to be easiest if you do shoulder paddling, which will be, I'm just trying to, like come up with my own terminology that even in my head it makes sense. I do not mind changing it later, because I don't know what the hell you would call paddling on the other side. If this is shoulder paddling, the other side would be pile paddling. You know what I mean? Piling, like entering the wave from the pile. That makes sense. So I'm going to enter the wave from the pile if I was on the other side. This way, I'm entering the wave from the shoulder, and I'm going to do shoulder paddling. But I think shoulder paddling, and that's going to get confusing with what a shoulder turn is, but a turn is a 180. Shoulder paddling is just a way to enter the wave. I'm going to enter from the shoulder. Pile paddling doesn't make any sense, but I think shoulder paddling gets the job done. And this was a shout out to this solo boater who's been surfing the pump house wave. He had one footage of him doing a low side turn that just, like, I noticed how it just locks you in, and then so I tried to repeat it, and now that's what I've done. And then so hell yeah, so we have established what the dynamics and the physics are. The physics are, if I'm going to enter this wave, I want to, and then let me back up. I'm going to turn that direction. So I'm going to turn up against the pile, and that means that the low side, this tube, as it's turning, will be on the low side. So let's just watch the full turn. So hell yeah. So this tube that I'm on is always on the low side of the trough until I do the spin. So that tube is always crossing into the trough and is on the low side. So what I have found is that if you start the turn from the low side, like establish this weight going in, even just that little amount with a paddle stroke and just weighting this tube just a little bit, and you can get it going a lot more. What's going to happen is you're going to load this tube. It's going to bite. But with the high rocker design that I have, like, I'm no longer just needing the boat to bite and then do the turning for me. I'm allowing that to happen more superficially underneath the boat where it's harder to kind of see, but the dynamics are still there. I'm going to drive this tube in. It's going to pick up this fast current. I'm going to now jump to the other side, which now I'm just doing a high side pile turn. And so any of the low side turns, I'm on that side, I'm going to now be on this side. You can freeze frame the camera and just imagine that I paddled in on the pile side. So that would be entering the wave from the pile, entering a wave from on the pile side. Yep. And so figure out a different way to maybe say that. But entering the wave on the pile side, this is what I would look like. I would be driving my boat down and across. I'm still going to do that same spin, like up against the pile. And now I'm ready to go for the pry. And then so when we go for the pry, on this one, that was kind of the whole reason I was trying to get to here, is that this is mimicking. So let's get back to this position. What I'm going to show you is this is the same mimicking. I was just turned around the other way. So now imagine this with me just turned around and my knees are up against this thwart. And I'm, in the turned around footage, I'm just taking a forward paddle stroke. But right here, you can see that the dynamics of this sweep are just way more, strengthy. It's doing a pry is just what we do. And it's just super strong. So I'm going to pry that around. And then this lean back, now I'm leaning onto that corner. So I know that portion of the boat that's whipping around ain't going to get hung up. It's going to, kind of ride and plane up and over that. And so this is also, feeling these planing surfaces, like when you are rotating and your boat's just kind of squashing to a stop, to be able to lean back onto this corner and to feel that slice and at least plane up and over. So now we did a full rotation. So now we're honestly over rotating, and this is the cool one where we're able to do that paddle stroke and do that. Hell yeah! So let's take a look at, let's take a look at it from here, because this is the position that I want to mimic. So here is a pile turn. That's all I wanted to show, but we do stay on the same side. We don't do a body switch. Hell yeah, and we hold it. Now, the cool thing about this footage is that I'm going to show that I'm faced the other way in the other footage, but we also we don't switch positions. Typically what I do is do this, and then once the boat turns around, it's just supernatural, as in, you know, not ghostly, but just it's natural to push off this leg and get to over here, especially since the boat is over rotating. If I pushed off this and jumped to the other side, and the other aspect of that, the boat is rotating this way, it's so easy to just counter rotate. That's why the typical move that I've been doing is have the boat rotate this way up against the pile and then push off this leg. Well, what am I doing? I'm doing, yes, I'm my opposite leg that you can't see. I'm bringing it underneath my seat, as close to underneath me as possible. This leg right here, I'm leveraging, you know, kind of like a spring action. And then I'm leaning forward once I give up on that. But this one we're doing the opposite. So if I was done with this, I would push off on this leg. The other foot would be underneath me. I would be leaning forward and pushing off. And then so I'd be rolling over that leg that's underneath me. That's one of the fundamentals of sitting right here and getting to the other side. And a lot of that's why this video can be 3 hours long. I could really care less. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, the terms that I like to use. And, yes, I'm even going to drink some water. All right, hell yeah. But with my math and physics videos, too, it's like after this 2-hour video, there was like one element that only takes 2 minutes to say. You know what I mean? So we should also do that. But anyway, this is just kind of going over the elements of switching spots. That opposite foot comes underneath me. This leg pushes off. I lean forward. I'm pivoting over that foot that's underneath me, and that's why it's just really easy to get over there and then spin. So I'm going to spin that direction, and we talked about how the boat is spinning this way. I would spin the other way and then sit right there in the forward position. I don't even have to switch hands with my paddle because I'm paddling forward here. And then when I get to the other side, I'm paddling forward. And because we're over-rotated, because this boat is over-rotating, when I jump to the other side, I need to forward paddle to actually keep it in this wave. You know what I mean? Where this was cool because this was the harder move that I would like to go back and just kind of practice more. I'm on this side. I'm doing a traditional pry, but I'm staying on that side. So as the boat is rotating that way, I got to rotate with the boat, and but give up on my pry or pry the boat to the front, pry the boat to the bow, hold the paddle there, switch my top hand to below my lower hand, get that pry locked in, have the other, other hand when it lets go, that T-grip comes over my head. Maybe that's not a big deal, but as I'm doing that, I know I have to rotate my body. So I'm going to switch hands first and then rotate my body. That was the method in my head, and I really only did it once, but I was amazed that it kind of locked in. And so I do not have this move on repeat, but it is one that I do wish to do on repeat. You know what I mean? And hell yeah. Okay, so we did that. Let's watch it. Let's watch it from the low side turn. So again, this is the low side turn. We jump to the high side, do that pry, but the low side turn just effectively sets up a deeper trough where the spin can be accomplished without getting pieced out. All right, hell yeah. Low side, high side pry, stay on the same side. Cool. So low side turn, jump to the high side, stay on that same side. So low side turn, jump to the high side, pry, get my paddle, stay on the same side. I'm just going to talk about what I'm going to do with the paddle. So pry, keep that paddle there and get it into that pry position. To do that, get that paddle, pry into that pry position, and keep rotating with the boat. The boat's going to rotate that direction. I have to rotate that direction. Hell yeah. All right, so low side turn, high side pry. Hold that paddle in pry position. Switch hands and rotate with the boat. So hell yeah, low side, high side pry, hold the paddle, switch hands, rotate with the boat. I think the rotating with the boat is crazy. Boat's rotating that way, paddle in position, I rotate that way. That is tricky because it feels like you're just rotating. You have to take your eyes off everything. It's almost a 3/4 rotation to where you're really trying to set this up. Like the second I'm here, I'm totally faced that direction, and I have to rotate downstream over towards the camera and then upstream. So that's a 3/4 rotation right at the end. Okay, so now we're gonna watch how that's similar. And I guess we'll just have to get there. Yeah, from this. So this was such a cool move because we were just, well, let's talk about what this is. So this is, because I'm spinning up against the shoulder, this is a low side turn. Low side just means that's how I'm starting off the turn. And that why I'm doing this is I'm trying to give it the most juice down into the trough and the most low position. Being on that side really drives you down into the trough, even though it's gonna kick and buck you. So that's why we do this low siding, and then we have to jump to the high side at some point as this is ready to bite. Doesn't really bite right here just because the dynamics of that shoulder, it's a really high location. But anyway, so we set up this pry, and now, and we talked about that, how it didn't turn around. If we did turn around, well, let's because I want to go over that. If this pry did turn, and I want to, let's say, if we were able to juice this pry out just a little bit more, so I'm going to be prying from here. There's no reason, and it's more this portion of the boat. Yes, that's interesting. So I just really have to be farther back. So that's what I'm going to work on. If I do this turn, I'm starting with the low side. So we're doing a shoulder turn starting with the low side. So it's a low side shoulder turn. When I jump to the high side, I need to jump way farther back. And then did we talk about how jumping to the high side pushes the boat in? You know what I mean? So that definitely does that. And I'm even going to take a step here because here, let's see if jumping to the high side pushes the boat into a more favorable position. I'm on the low side. I'm going to jump to the high side. That's going to push the boat towards the camera. You know what I mean? And as it's turning that way, it's pushing the boat down into the trough. So, technically, on this low-sided turn, you can start your turn all the way down into the trough. And because, if I was just a little bit more angled down there, jumping to this side really, but look at that. It's amazing how just jumping to that side throws the boat that direction. I don't know if that's exactly what's going on or the boat is just finally getting up over that plane. But yeah, it seals the deal. So I'm doing a low side, but you could just drive down on the low side. That will also just race you down to the bottom of the trough. At some point, you need to jump to the high side to keep this from kicking. You know what I mean? So there's two things that are actually like maybe good and bad at the same time. If you're already going to be so low in this trough that you're just ramming the front of your boat with a wave, jumping to the high side right there is going to throw that portion even farther into the incoming water, and so that might bite early. But jumping on this could release with a releasable boat, a rocker boat. Hell yeah. But yeah, so what I wanted to show there was just that jumping motion from one side to the other. Can you see the boat squish out? and I think you can. From here, you're going to see the boat, I think it just accelerates down, but like from there to there, I think you do get a little bit of push that direction. And maybe, you know what I mean, that there's not, we do, that's interesting. When I jump from here to there, look at that splash. So that splash is indicative of that boat pushing up against there. And it kind of gets squeezed, and that, even that stickiness, you know, is like having someone sit over here. The second you get this to tack up, that is going to be a driving surface. And so hell yeah. So the dynamics there are super cool. And you're only going to get this in R1. Like that, like jumping from one side to another can be the most exploited R1 thing, especially if you have a boat underfoot that is super glassy, that has really good dynamics. And this is where I'm just going to get on a little pedestal. This boat is 10 feet. There is no reason why this can't be the fastest, you know. I mean, 10 feet's pretty decent. 10 feet is long for a fast whitewater kayak. I don't know how fast like they're doing like the Green River races or those kayak races and stuff like that. But 10 feet, that's where I kind of flipped a switch this year when it comes to R1 design, to be like, whoa, we have more advantage because we have more boat to work with. And the fact that once you can plane it onto edge or edge half of your boat and release the other half, then the other half is just counterweight and your portion of that counterweight. So only the surface that's actually touching the river is is your dynamics. And so that can make a 10-foot boat be the fastest. I mean, an R1 could be one of the fastest ones out there. And I think, like, my boat, for whatever reason, has always been able to release the other tube just because the floor is a little bit lower. And I'm just saying I lucked out that NRS made this, but I don't even know if they made it by mistake. Just with the rafts, there's not a lot of like exactness when it comes to like the design. And so I think the floor is just due to an anomaly got pushed out. I don't think any raft in existence has ever pushed out their floor on purpose. It's always been railed runners, and you had a railed boat. And I'm going to use the term railed, and it's not going to be railed in a bad way, because there's a whole lot of aspects of railed boats that are way more stable. I think a better term, if railed is a negative, and even mentally if I use it as a negative term, just because I'm exploring the genre of fully rockered boats where the floor is lowered and it's the opposite of railed. Just because in the ski world, a railed ski is not a good term. It's a negative. But the other term would be paddle cat. So a raft that is more paddle cat, that means that it has a floor that's slightly raised. So if the floor is slightly raised, you enhance the paddle cat. And from that term, a paddle cat is highly superior when it comes, like, just in mentally. I think that's because, like, when I talk about a railed boat, it almost sounds like I'm confusing myself with a railed ski, as in, like negative or something like that. But a paddle cat, because I've used a paddle cat, and even with the paddle, I'm just gonna try to use that term now, paddle cat. The rafts that function more like a paddle cat, that have slightly raised floors, a lot more stable. Even in holes, the dynamics release a little bit better, where a round boat, the dynamics, or that's where I'm working, where the dynamics on the edges are pretty bad. Like if you do bite your upstream tube, it's usually going to flip you pretty hard. Where if I can get that to bite mid-boat, that's what I'm going to work on with a seam down the middle. I think that'll actually work really well. Even if I don't have a seam down the middle, there's plenty of opportunity to get the downriver tube, the high-sided tube, to actually start biting in various ways that would also help its performance for stability and stuff like that. All right, hell yeah. Oh, we don't have to go like a full hour on this video, but I don't want to go 2 hours. So what are we looking at? Low side turn, pushing out. So that's what we're looking at. That boat pushing out when we jump to one side to another. So yeah, I was just saying that R1 rafting is fun from that perspective. The fact that you can jump around the boat. And I know a lot of people aren't jumping around primarily because their offside isn't good. And I can say that because my offside wasn't good 2 years ago. I actually had to physically focus on paddling offside. And I didn't even honestly, I'd never even focused on river running. I just focused on wave surfing. Like, you know what I mean? Or not, yeah, wave surfing for sure, but even just eddying in, eddying out. Like eddying across on my strong side. That, like paddling in the lake, and I keep saying strong, but offside. Just doing all these little things on your offside. And some come real easy. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if, you know, like let's say I am getting pieced out and I want to get to that eddy. Usually it's paddling, doing an upriver turn that way. We've made a video on that. But hey, let's say this is my strong side, but let's say it was my offside. All I got to do is just take forward paddle strokes to get there. So there's plenty of like eddying out opportunities where you jump to your offside and all you have to do is forward paddle strokes. And that's a great place to start because your boat is functionally doing something highly dynamic and with a positive feedback. Like the positive feedback is almost 100%. Like your offside forward strokes are 100% getting a job done, like perfectly. No special technique is required, and so those are always solid feelings. All right, so hell yeah. So I just wanted to show in that clip how the boat, when I jump from here to there, you can kind of see it squish out, and we talked about how it pieced up, or you know, it tacked up. I'm going to use that word. Instead of pearl, like tack, I don't even think anyone knows what the hell a pearl is. Or like, I don't even know what the hell a pearl is. It's just like when you like dive the bow of your boat in and it goes vertical. You know what I mean? But even when people are doing like, when kayaks do a loop, they're not like, oh, I'm pearling the bow of my boat. So I'll have to, yeah. So I'm just going to use the term bite, even though I'll use the word pearl a lot, but hell yeah, when these tubes start to hit, you know, current, because in a raft they're so rounded, that I think has to change just a little bit, because you do just tack up so much resistance, like like water's sticky, man, and so the second you tack into there, then you're gripped, and it's like you're putting weight on that side. So we talked about that. All right, so let's go back to this shoulder turn. So we're doing a low side shoulder turn, jumping to the high side, doing a paddle stroke. We talked about how we should be able to whip that around. The only reason we didn't, a few reasons, we didn't paddle down into the trough on this low side enough. And then even when we jumped to the high side too early, we could have took a small little quick forward stroke before the pry. So even whatever we mess up on the low side portion, we can jump to the high side. And, you know, I got to focus on that. Maybe we do need a little half stroke before I set up the pry. And then when I set up this pry, you know, it's a little bit weak. I'm just, you know, I'm already doing something funky where I'm kind of feeling like I'm going in backwards anyway. And hell yeah. And, but yeah, this turn has nothing to do with the pile behind me. This turn is just a shoulder turn now. So now I'm on the strong side. I'm on the high side. I'm doing a shoulder turn. You know, I could have used another half of forward stroke. I'm doing a pry, but the pry's weak, and we're just not spinning all the way. And so, you know what I mean? But now, and I even have to catalog this in my mind. Because we did a shoulder turn that was under-rotated, it sets us up to getting pushed up against the pile and now smiley face the pile. Even though we're backwards, we talked about that, we're fine. I'm going to jump to the front, throw on the pry. If I threw on the pry right now and jumped really high to the front, I mean, not throw on the pry, but I'm thinking in reverse, but throw on the forward sweep, then and really get to this portion of the boat, the front of the boat, because I have to get that portion, that can't happen. That portion of the boat can't just plug right there because I'm going to totally stop. But I could get this thing to over-rotate. Let's say I did. Let's say I was able to get this thing to over-rotate. Then that would be fine. I'm almost ready to, like here, if I wanted to go over there, I'd have to forward paddle. So right here, I'm almost ready to forward paddle, which I'm doing, and that seals the deal. But if I over-rotated this, then I'd be going that direction, and I would be prying my boat back to this position. And so, but because we under-rotated, we just, so, I mean, but that's where I need to also do this move because it's really stable. Because we do a shoulder turn to a backwards pile turn that's under-rotated. But because it's under-rotated, I save it just with a forward stroke. And then this clip does have more, but we weren't able to surf and do a spin on this. But then once, I got plenty of clips of me going from this position and then rotating up against this pile, doing a pile turn from that side. Okay, and then so this is the pile turn with the cool thing about this one is it's a pile turn, which I've done plenty of. And I could set this pile turn in just from paddling on the pile side. So let's talk about that terminology. If I paddle into the wave on the pile side, I'm over here, and then I'm going to do a pile turn. That means turning up against the pile. And because I didn't use the word low side, that means that I didn't, I wasn't paddling on the low side to set this up. This one, however, I do set up on the low side. So this is a a low side pile turn. I'm setting up on the low side, but I am spinning ultimately against the pile. This is also entering the wave with shoulder paddling. So this is entering the wave on the shoulder side. I think that's if I say the other side is entering the wave on the pile side, it tells you what I'm doing to the wave. I'm entering it. Entering it on the pile side would be over there. This, I'm entering the wave, and I'm going to enter the wave on the shoulder side. So I could enter the wave on the shoulder side and then do a shoulder turn. That would be, and every turn, so let's take a look at when we actually do the turn. So because we jump to there, this is where you do the turn. When you do a turn, you're always going to be typically prying, and you're always going to be on the high side. And so every spin, and don't quote me on this because the second, I see a category of spin that's the opposite of this, but this is going to be a high side spin. So so we're spinning up against the pile. So this is a pile turn, which means that I'm prying off the high side. The boat is going up into the pile and spinning off that pile instead of the front of the boat spinning off the shoulder. Both have currents that are, the shoulder has side currents that really want to spin the boat out, and then the pile also has currents that want to spin the boat to the middle. And so right on the eddy line is kind of the secret sauce, where that eddy line that I'm entering is your zero momentum location. If I put the bow to the left, I'm going to hit, the water that's not catching surf. And so look at that. That's a whole current line through there. There's a whole current line going into the pile. Even if that water going into the pile stops, you still have fast-moving water, where this eddy line that I'm going into is neutral. Right on that eddy line, the second it enters this wave is fairly neutral, and so that's why setting up these turns is placing the bow over into that water, and then it grips, and then me being on the if it grips on that front corner, I'm going to jump to the diagonal. We've talked about that, and that's where I'm going to do a pry. And then so these pries are always going to be on the high side. I don't know if they're always, but for the most part, I mean, just because it seems difficult to actually throw your body down into the low side and start turning, not impossible. That's where I was just like, you can't just say absolutes here. But hell yeah. So this is a low side turn, but it's a low side pile turn. When I actually do the pile turn, I don't have to say it's a high-sided pile turn. Just every turn is going to be a high-sided. But that's why I threw in the asterisk, because there's going to be places where I don't know. You know what I mean? You might be able to do, you might be able to pry. If I'm prying this portion of the boat, I might be able to lean to the front and then throw my paddle in right there. That's going to grip, hella. And maybe that can still hold me in. You know what I mean? But most common spins are going to be from this high-sided position, whether you're prying or doing, it doesn't matter. You're just you're doing some sort of high side and then sweep, whether that's a forward sweep or a back sweep or a pry, you know what I mean, or a bow draw, which would be a forward sweep, kind of. Hell yeah, that's from that high-sided position. Okay, so low-sided pile turn. The pile turn indicates that we're doing the turn on the high side. And if no other indication, then it means that we're doing that high side pile turn with a pry. So this is a low side pile turn. So just the fact that the low side is the setup. If I just say I'm doing a pile turn, then it didn't have a unique setup. Because I'm setting up on this low side, I got to jump to the actual location that I'm doing the pile turn. The pile turn spins hella, and this is the one that we lock into place. All right, hell yeah. So this should be a low-sided pile turn, and then we switch positions. So right here, we're going to switch positions over there. And hell yeah. So low side, jump to the high side, and then switch positions. So let's take a look at this one to kind of do a little breakdown. So we're going to set it up from that low side turn. We get hella deep into this trough, and then that's all biting. But when I do jump, let's see, when I do jump to this tube, let's see if it releases. But I'm jumping and prying at the same time. And so hell yeah. So a lot of there was a lot of stuff that's going to try to kick me out. But this hit right here isn't hitting incoming current. This is side current. So even if I use the physics from here, I get why this isn't kicking me out downstream. If I load up the boat onto this incoming wave and we have such small feature, it's just going to kick us off. But this kick, this bite right here, is manageable. Throw in the pry, jump to the high side. So we were on the low side. That's why we're biting in right there strong. And we're paddling. Well, I'm basically trying to paddle an arc. So we're paddling an arc through here. That arc does smash up against this water current. I'm jumping to the high side, throwing in the pry as immediate as possible. Because the whole boat is surfing up against the pyramid, and we're planing over the top of it. See, now you can kind of see how the boat is kind of this unstable position on the pyramid of this wave. And because we do have kind of a peaky pyramid, this makes these turns really easy because there's nothing just gripping and preventing rotation. So the rotation is just really good. Let's talk about, see how this foot right here, this is my kind of style. I throw both feet into the both corners of the front thwart, and then when I do, I just got done with my pry, I'm over rotated and I need to rotate my body around. I'm going to take that outside foot, bring it underneath me, and this one, maybe I didn't use any of my text. Usually I bring this outside foot underneath me and then throw this leg over, but I even got to watch what I actually do. This one I actually use my hand because typically I don't need to use that hand. I can be totally gripped on this paddle and then use my leg, especially in that combination of bringing that far leg underneath me and then pushing off with this thigh, and then leaning forward and getting my body over that. That's the only way where this doesn't feel like just like a sit-up, where you're just kind of falling to that location. But this works, and especially putting a hand down here. And I got to focus on this one, actually, because this is one that I can throw into my wheelhouse. I'm over-rotated. I'm going to put a hand here, because I know if I put a hand here, that's going to weight this side. And then we've talked about these dynamics. So let's say the boat is just surfing right here. If I had my weight over there, it's still angled towards the camera, and then this would be a low-sided turn. If I was sitting at all on this outer tube, I would be low-side turning. And so even just getting my hand close to that tube kind of makes it a low side. It could have been a low-side turn. This is where I do like these diamond-shaped boats, because there's a chance that they could be more dynamic than a paddle cat with more straighter tubes, because like right here, this is still right here. It's over-rotated, fully over-rotated. We're going to go the other direction. But right here, it's still under-rotated. We did our pry, and I could do an early switch to the other side. And this is even fascinating me, where here's one thing that I could do. I could do this pry and then just shift. And even if I was backwards, I could just shift over to that low side. I'm backwards, but that's totally fine, because this is under-rotated, so it's still under-rotated. The trough is this way. My boat's that way. If I just shift my weight and sit backwards on that tube, that's the setup of a... So this, I'm going to drink some water, because this is totally full circle. So that's going to be the setup of a low-side turn. And that's going to be an aggressive low side turn, because we started our low side turns from the back of the boat, and that provides the most stable paddling position. But if you jump to the front of the boat on the low side turn, you're going to dip this tube in to all that trough, and it's already angled. And so again, this is where I do and need to experiment thoroughly with this diamond shaped boat and get it dialed in, before then, moving to a paddle cat and trying to do the same things. Because I'm sure if these tubes were straight and then pontooned, it might... Still is the same, though. Even if this tube was totally straight, it's angled towards you. And if I go lean on that front tube, it's coming towards you. So actually, that's from the physics perspective, there might not be a huge need for diamond-shaped boats no more. Like, okay, here's kind of like a, penny for your thoughts and stuff. But these front compartments, the front and rear compartments, are just awful for bathtubbing water and getting water to come in over the boat for exiting holes. Paddle cats have shown that this cockpit in the center is all you need to fill up, and still it fills up almost too much, even in a paddle cat. It's plenty stable when it does fill up in a paddle cat. Maybe you want it more, maybe you want it less, but you for sure don't want this whole thing to bathtub. Even on a small hole that's, should just be easily played on and used as training, is just an absolute nightmare and just a stuck hazard. You can get permanently stuck in a tiny hole where you're just like, oh, that's the absolute worst. And your exhaustion can go, your tank of gas can go from full to empty just on one tiny hole. And that hole could just be, just anywhere on a river. And, okay, hell yeah. So I think that can be the huge improvement from a round boat perspective, is that you get rid of these two compartments. You either fabric over them and do waterproof zippers, do whatever you need to do. If you want the storage, cool, but other than that, they're hella getting in the way. And this is more down the road, but I really do think for like like I'm just gonna throw out the Stikine just because it's so remote from an R1 perspective that you can, like, if you can get to shore and climb out and get a helicopter out, cool, but you can literally die from boat separation. I mean, or just what a nightmare. You have to end your trip. If you get separated once, your trips end if you're still alive. You know what I mean? If you can get to shore and then hike out and get a helicopter out. But so I really do think, like, when it comes to running, like the Stikine, you would want to strap yourself in. So I've been working on that. I haven't taken any of the straps beyond the lake just because they're not perfect. But the tech is really good, because I've strapped myself in a way where once you're outside of the boat, you're actually kind of lifted up over the perimeter line a little bit, and you can still, if the boat flips, you can reflip it. So you're as close as possible without, so your entanglement's really reduced. And then obviously everything's quick release, and I did multiple quick release. I actually set it up where every 6 inches was a quick release. And so, in a panic situation, you could just hit any of them. And you could have 8 quick releases along the length of a short cord that attaches you to the boat, in addition to, the main quick release off of, well, and then depending where you want it, you almost want it like a chest harness. So that would be, so all your quick releases could be external to the actual rope that's attached to you potentially. But in that design, you really don't want a lot of garbage in the front and rear compartments. That's all I'm thinking. You would want a really sleek boat where everything is kind of compartmentalized. That's going to suck for bringing spare paddles, but definitely, it still fits the bill for having one breakdown in your cockpit compartment. That sucks to have something in your cockpit compartment because your knees can hit it and stuff from that type of thing. But you could kind of foam it out and make a placement for it, even for that risk. But then you could just have your gear in zippered locations, and I think that just makes sense. You know what I mean? Where there's certain rivers that you would want to R1, but the separation risk is just too instantaneous. Without a roll, you're just going to get separated. And so just instantly, you know what I mean? So there's that. So there's the idea of really taking an R1 boat into rivers that you can't, statistically. You could clean the Stikine, that's for sure. There's no reason you couldn't clean the Stikine, and hopefully it does. You know what I mean? That's the prize, I think. I'm getting older, but not that matters. I mean, you lose strength as you get older, but hell yeah, I think that's the other thing, is just you know what I mean? What's possible, and that's why I don't think people see it to a large degree, but I see it from watching Dane Jackson, as a young, some of his older videos, just as a young kid and stuff. You start on waves. The physics you get from surfing is going to be, just monumentally valuable when you get into big stuff, because all the physics are the same. It's just a little bit on steroids. You know what I mean? But and the physics from an R1 boat, all this stuff that I'm covering in this video, is so fast that you have to train your body and your brain to just be on point, and then watch your footage, you know what I mean, to be well, why didn't you do that? But I couldn't even look at some of my best surfs are from the earlier days, just because I had access to, this wave was way better, we had more water, and I was able to get on some other surf waves at a pretty young age, and but still those surfs were good, but still had no idea what was happening from that perspective, and just from what the hell's happening, but that's where in the last year or two, And even this wave, even the last like 3 years, because global warming and stuff, this wave just always hit low water. And then I was just like, well, let's get onto this wave as much as possible. And the second it gets too low where I can't do anything, I'll still go and just eddy back and forth. And what happened is I would go on some of these low water days expecting just to eddy back and forth, just working on that skill. I was able to do something. I was able to surf in some sort of way. And that's the other thing from these footage I don't think people understand is like this wave is like freaking impossible. Like just from me 4 years ago, I would have been like, nah, this wave is impossible. It doesn't even straight surf. And then so that's the other thing. Some of the commenters are just like, well, yeah, it's like, oh, obviously you would just want to be able to straight surf. I've been focusing on spins because it's one of those things that tacks your boat in and then keeps that momentum going, and where you can take a small wave and you can constantly feed that momentum down into the trough, even on waves where it's almost impossible to just straight surf, you know what I mean, and just hold a friggin' surf, man. You're just going to get bumped out. And so that needs to be said. That, this wave in particular on this, the other one over there, now that has a side surf that'll just lock you in. But this wave right here is like, kind of one of those things that challenges the R1er to be like, hey, do you have a fast enough boat? Do you have these angles to get into the trough? Are you freeing up your other tubes so they're not getting in the way? Are you rotating on to whatever tininess that you have to work with? And then sealing the deal. And the other thing on small waves is sometimes it's too fast. Like all these things just happened. So let's start watching some footage. All these things are fairly quick. Where higher water usually is a little slower. So it's fascinating how on higher water everything kind of slows down. But this is more forgiving. And then on waves like these, I can pay attention to where I enter and where I exit. Because like, hey, I'm spinning, and I'm just thinking I'm spinning in place. It takes a while to be like, no. Like the physics of this and just watching footage is you're spinning all the way to the middle. And so the middle is kind of where you're at. And so we were talking, I think getting back to this, we were over-rotated. But I said if I under-rotated and then just jumped right here, I would be on a low side turn, and then I would be low siding up against this. And this is cool because you know what? Now we can have a place to kind of finish this video strong. Is because when I get back, when I surf all the way over there, I come back here and I try to do spins up against this pile. And you'll see that we do high side spins only. We're going to be on this side. We're going to try to get the boat as low into the trough. And I've already mentioned that this side is higher. So it's very difficult to almost like attain, using that just word attain as just like a kind of like, hey, to get from one location to another using whatever means possible. But I even need to attain getting up into this higher area and then down into that trough. And so we take some forward strokes. We heavily lean onto this high-sided tube. We get that to go, and then we pry off the back tube. And we get the whole front portion of our boat to spin up against this pile, and then we use that pivot point and that riding to do it again, and then we switch positions. But I'm just sharing that on this, because this is going to be heavily over-rotated all the time, is, two things. This is heavily over-rotated, but if I get to here, I know this is a surfable position because I surf here all the time and then rotate back. And we just did 2 clips where this one, we held the surf right there, so that was a hell yeah. And then I think the first clip even, where we do this reverse, this one holds it in place just because, yeah, so let's compare this. This was, Yeah, this was just setting up a pile turn. All we're doing is setting up a pile turn right there and then under rotating it and then pretending like we're jumping back to this location. We're just on that location. And then so we're holding it in place. This, we do a pile turn and then hold that location. And then the next one, we do a pile turn and over rotate. But we don't hold this angle. We jump to the other side, which totally screws us over for surfing back this direction. So that's where, because if I surf back this direction on that tube, it would be heavily low-sided, and I'm low-siding against the fastest portion of that, and it's almost impossible to surf over like that. The high side driving in with an angle this way is the only thing that's going to seal the deal. But this is where I do have the opportunity here, because this I'm going to do every time. I'm going to do this pile turn and then spin out. And then I'm jumping to the other side because I'm going to drive that way. If I do jump to the other side and I've over-rotated, then this is the side that I want to be on. I'm driving down into the trough. I'm on the higher side the entire way. If I drove down into the trough on this tube would be closer, it would be on the low side. So this would be the low side tube. I'm on the high side tube. So this drives all the way across, and I'm able to, and this is where I would just get pieced out. This angle, is just going to do this until I get pieced out. So let's talk about potentially what I could try is I could try to do a shoulder turn. Now at higher flows, I'm able to do a shoulder turn the easiest because the back of my boat is still kind of up against a fairly decent pile. You know what I mean? So over-rotated, and this is where I'd almost want to just quickly rotate this turn around again. And then so I would, is that what we just did? So we did this is a pile turn, so I'm rotating before the pile. Like if it's a pile turn, I'm rotating from the shoulder up into the pile, and that we didn't talk about. I'm gonna get some more water. So yeah, typical pile turn, we're going from the shoulder up into the pile. When we over-rotate, we're probably getting surfed off the other side. Doesn't mean we're going to get surfed off the other side. If this pile is big enough, it might not allow us to get pushed up and over the pile. And so we're just going to be locked in on this side of the pile. But because this pile is so low, we're just going to surf all the way across. And now we're on the other side. So now there is no more pile. All the pile is on this side of me. If I did another turn, if I did another pry right here, it would be a shoulder turn. This location is going to pick up current from the shoulder, and that's where if I just stay on this side, I'm going to exit. So what do? I know that I can start paddling aggressively and sweeping because when you get to the shoulder, there's less bite from the nose because it's pretty flat over here. So the boat kind of flattens out, and it's the wider trough. This is a steeper trough, but you get kind of like a flatter area, and you're able to take what I'm going to call, again, another term for shoulder turn. So I'm going to say this is shoulder pad. This is shoulder paddling. So that is going to be the trickiest for me not to mess up, but still, this is the same shoulder paddling that you would use when you paddle into this wave. If I'm just over here paddling in and I was doing shoulder paddling, I would paddle on that side. Our angle is just a little bit, that direction, but we're still going to use those shoulder paddling techniques, and that's the fastest way to bring an R1 boat around. And I'm going to eat my words on that because obviously it would be faster to jump to this side and do a pry. But prying is going to pull your boat away from this. But that's kind of what you want. If I was on this side, I want to pull my boat up into the pile and then keep it from biting and then having the bow slice across. And that would be a faster way to do that. But this has no retentive power. And so just getting the surfing part of the boat up over that hole with a And you know what I mean? This video is annoying for me, but I'm just trying to use terminology that I can put on repeat. And then so we save this by using shoulder paddling. So we use shoulder paddling to get the boat to turn around. I also do a body switch because, and this is where, this is going to be the easiest thing. Like do shoulder paddling, and then this is going to be the new high side. Cool. And check this out. Let's say this is your offside, and this is my offside. This is my right side, this is my offside. All I have to do is shoulder paddling, and then jump to the strong side and start paddle prying. You know what I mean? So that's gonna be the secret, you know, to figure out where those places are where you're just like, oh, hell yeah, I could be on this offside, shoulder paddle, and then bring it around, and then I can jump to my stronger side, and if I needed to pry this or paddle, I'm ready to go. But when you're learning offside, you're not able to pry effectively. But forward paddling, hell yeah, you got that. And just even offside, sometimes sitting over here, look at my legs, you know, they're in the position that I like to have my legs kind of at an angle. This one front, like this one, that left corner, the other one front corner. It just allows me to do a higher lean back, especially with the toes up against the front thwart. It even balances a little bit of weight. It counter levers for leaning out. All right, so hell yeah. So now we're going back to here. So this is kind of where we're going to end the video of doing a turns. We're going to try to get as low as possible. You're going to see it's going to require like an attaining move to drive down into this trough to then set up the spin. If I just try to set up a spin from like a surf position, I'm already at the top of this wave and I'm just going to spin off. All right, so let's watch to see if we can set this up. So I'm going to get the surf, and that time, well, so might as well watch another one of these. So low side, so this is going to be a low side pile turn. So we're going to do a low side pile turn, over rotated, and but we do a low side pile turn, and then with a switch. So we do low side paddle turn, and that's where I need to get terminology on that. Low side paddle turn switch with a switch, you know, with a body switch. But yeah, and we do just a very typical body switch, but we do that one because this is my strong side. No, this should be the easiest way. We're just not set up. We do it so fast that the paddle switch, I'm not pushing off with this thigh, and I'm not getting that left foot underneath me. So that's, and I'm dropping this foot down and using this hand to switch. And that's fine. And we talked about how that could be beneficial is if I do this faster. If I'm going to set this pry up from mid-boat, and if I under-rotate, there's two things I could do. I could get this hand down way early and farther over to try to get it to drive this way. I don't want it to under-rotate, though, because if I under-rotate, then I'm just hitting and then piecing out. So I do need it to fully rotate. But yeah, there's a lot that I see that on this I could push down more. And like I said, this is a new surfing position. It's setting me up to low side turn back into this pile. And that's the last thing we're going to talk about. Is it possible to go low side and get this boat to drive down the trough, and then it's going to turn up into the pile? It's going to be a low side pile turn. So even though I'm driving down the low side, I still need to switch to the pile and then do a pry to do the rotation. But hell yeah. So this one gets over here, and then we paddle all the way back. And then so let's just watch these turns. And this we're going to get low into the trough, and then do the pry. And I'm getting low, but I'm also getting far to the back of the boat. And obviously you can kind of see the difference between that third one. It doesn't go. So now what I want to we can look at this though. You know, we can analyze this, and then I want to analyze what I actually want to do next time on this wave. So hell yeah, trying to get a paddle stroke forward and then pry. So you'll always see that, like one paddle stroke forward and a pry. But I need to be starting from a high position. So if I'm starting over here, I'm already getting a lot of momentum. So this one's pretty easy. I know it's going to go. And you can see that I even turn it in. So I'm using that driving across momentum to, and then that kind of sweep to find that, let the boat get up there. Lean back. Now I have all this boat way up there. And now my mass and the boat is the lowest in the trough, and there's nothing behind me. And this is where we can shave from an R1 boat off the back. For a surfing boat, there's no reason you need all that back. There is reason you need all this front, though. I tried to deflate the boat, and I was able to deflate, I don't know if this is the compartments, but I was able just to have the floor and then just kind of rolled the front up. But it doesn't have any, I think two things are going on there. There's no weight on the front, and so it doesn't counterbalance my weight. Just the fact that this is sticking out, and your contact point is here, even though this is a very lightweight boat, it still helps plane the front of the nose down in. And so you can counter that by having weight. And I'm just thinking on the fly that was probably the main reason, but also when you are surfing, you want this to actually touch. If you look at kayak surfs, the front of the boat is in contact, and we've talked about how anything in contact is tacky, and it helps you stick. And if you're on a downward planing angle, that's going to stick and ride into that wave. You don't want things just to fully release. You don't just want to pivot, just kind of one pivot point, on the pile, because that pile is ready to pop you to the top and pop you out. You want a surface, and that makes sense. I was looking at some of the kayak surfs where they're flat, they're wide, under where your weight is. They can be pointy and stuff at the nose, but you need a planing surface. You need that surface to sheet water and to when you do have a downward slope, that you're skipping like a stone down it. And so, hell yeah. And that's where more contact will actually... So yeah, it's kind of a... but the other thing that happens is if the front of the boat kind of tacks in to the wave, it does grip up, and it changes the flow characteristics of the incoming water. Like if you're able to drive down a trough and then plug, like a long kayak into the water, then that water is essentially going to turn into eddy water. Whatever is tacking to it from a physics perspective has zero velocity, and you get laminar, at least a little bit of laminar flow off of that. But then you just change the characteristics where you create... I'm just going to use the term low, I have no idea. I'm going to use the wrong term anyway. But it creates low pressure. That's what I was going to say. It just, and don't quote me on whether that statement is true. But hell yeah, you've just kind of stopped water, and now water has to go around that. So anywhere where... I think so. That's what I noticed is a shorter boat up front. Actually, it got kicked out. Like from what I understood is that you wanted a short back end to where your weight is to allow that to drive in. You want the front end to be fairly decent, so you can actually tack in and plug that nose into the wave. Now, I hate this surface where it's, 12 or more inches of just stopping and then perfectly rounded, because the water just sucks up against it and tacks too hard. And it's the main reason why we're getting kicked out, and it's the main reason why we're plugging, and, and the dynamics aren't just slicey and just, I think you want more slicey, you want more subby, just a little bit. And so hell yeah, so reduce some length off the back, and then potentially keep, you don't need all this length, but hell yeah. All right. So yeah, so that's all this drive across is gonna, and then that paddle stroke, and then seal the deal. How about the second one? The second one we hardly paddle in, but this, what happens is, like, I don't have... If I paddle twice, I just become static right here, and it doesn't help. So it's just like I have like one opportunity to get this one stroke in, like that, and then that's kind of good. And it's almost, and if I review my footage, it's not down, it's across. What I'm trying to do is get this boat across. See how now the boat's across this wave, and so when the boat planes up against this wave, that surface is going to ride up and form that angle, and then it keeps that angle downward. And then when and then the switch is really important too on this, because when I do this, I'm switching. And if I just look at this, I'm switching to, I already switched, and now I'm in a low side turn that way. So this position will glide me down. Because I'm continuing to rotate, this low side turn, this is a teeter-totter point where this just helps me drive in, but the boat is still rotating. Did I say that? You know what I mean? Did I even follow it for myself? Is that when I do this body switch, and if I do the body switch early, the boat can be going that direction, but it just has enough rotational motion that it continues to over-rotate, and then I'm just ready for the next. But this is where if I had identical features, if I had this wave to my left and then another wave identical to my right, I would be able to, well, not necessarily. If this was a low side turn the other way, I'd be setting myself for a low side pile turn if there was another identical pile. All right, but this is where I kind of wanted to talk about this more advanced move. And let's look at why this one didn't go. So is my boat across? Not really, and it kind of, we're not low enough, and we hit this tube too early, and I'm just shearing my boat across the pile. So that's kind of interesting. It almost goes. But yeah, let's take a look at that one compared to this one. All right, so this is the new one. This one does go. Hell yeah. And yeah, so the boat is just across there. Yeah, and I'm shearing up against there. Yeah, that's interesting. And this one didn't go. And I'm just plugging the side of my boat, so I'm not getting myself past that point, and the boat is hitting right there. That's the main deal right there. Right here, this one does go. I'm getting that wave right next to me. I mean, it's close. You know what I mean? That's why it's close, but one works, one doesn't. All right, hell yeah. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at all three. I'm about done, but I'm going to take a look at all three of these and see if I could do a low side turn on this. So just pretend that I'm right here, because this was one of the positions. Had I in one of the spins, and if I'm over rotating, I jump to the other side and then I just roll that way. I'm on the high side and then I do a paddle turn back in or something like that. We can take a look at that. But there was one opportunity that as I'm rolling, if I'm doing this pile turn this way, I'm going to be on the high side. I'm going to be prying. And then the boat's going to be rolled up this way. I'm going to be sitting on this side facing the other direction, but sitting on this side facing that way. As I roll in and do a pile turn right here, I'm thinking I could just shift my weight over here, even if I'm facing that direction. And then I would be driving in this way on the low side, making this a low side turn. I don't think it's going to work because this is going to instantly bite and then carry me to the top, where this move requires a ton of this boat to just get over here in front of this wave. But if I was able to get over onto this side, I could, it's going to be tricky. But let's just walk through it. Hopefully it just glides me down. And then when I glide down on that low side, I'm going to hopefully feel it bite and then turn up against the pile. Yeah, right. But then I have to jump to this pile. So I would be over there driving it in, and then I would jump to this position right here. But that's promising, because we talked about if I'm over here and then I jump to this pile, the boat shifts that direction away from me. And then so that keeps the boat from just ramming into this pile right away and gives me a little bit more juice. And then I have to set up this pry. So I think it is possible. And so, hell yeah. And again, let's say I was on that low side. I'm going to be low side turning. Hopefully that doesn't bite. It probably will. But then I'll jump to the high side. That'll shift the boat out. And then I'll jump for a pry. But yeah, and so let's take a look at where I was thinking that would be possible. Yes, it was this one. So I was thinking I would be able to jump to that low side and then get the boat. So I'm going to do this spin, which is super common, and then early shift to this tube. Drive this tube down and across. I don't think that's possible. And then try to surf it back the other direction. And then jump to the pile right here and try to do a spin. But one of the things that I'm gonna run across is if I do this, I can jump early to here to try to seal that deal just a little bit, but know that I might have to shift forward. I'm going to be totally backwards in this, but I could shift forward a little bit because I need to. By shifting forward, the boat jets forward. So I need to stop this rotation right here by jumping to this tube. And that's going to do it. This is going to hook in. And then keep moving my boat. I'm going to be facing backwards, but move my body that direction. The boat's going to shoot in, and that might provide the momentum. The cool thing about R1 is even just shifting your momentum. If I was sitting right here and I just jumped that direction, it's the equivalent of a solid paddle stroke. The boat is now shooting that direction. And as it does shoot that direction, maybe it gets a little bit of a glide, and then it's going to get past this wave, and then I'm going to jump to that high side, do my pry, and then I would be able to do, and I would need to switch around at some point, or I'd have to do it completely backwards and do a bow sweep. But hell yeah. All right, so I think I'm done with this, but this was a good video for me to go over the current things that I know so far. And the interesting thing is, I never got into kayaking and playboating to any real strength to learn it like skateboarding, to be like, oh, this is a turn you would do. I think I've gotten into surfs and stuff and never really spins where I knew what the hell I was doing. And so the fact that it is equivalent to skateboarding, where you can do like almost a spin 4 different ways, that's what we're trying to catalog with rafting. Just because, I don't know, you're kind of exploiting all these things. And the reason you should be for me, the reason I should be exploiting these is because every small surf is trying to like kick you out, but there's always a moment there that you're just like, oh, well, before you got kicked out, you were just set up to do this other thing. And then to try to figure out what that other thing is and try to capitalize on these missed opportunities. And hell yeah, so I'll just end with this, is just like, yeah, some of these waves are too small to straight surf, where doing spins on repeat is your locked in position. So if I am able to do like, might as well watch these spins on repeat. All right, so if I'm able to do these spins on repeat, this is my locked in position. This is equivalent of me straight surfing, just because this is the the most dynamically stable position in this wave. And, you know what I mean? And so, and I'll even try that next time. The other thing that I need to try is to actually weight more of the bow. Because if I weight the bow, I might be able to straight surf a little bit easier. I'm so focused on spins, and it's not because like I got straight surfing down. It's because straight surfing is the hardest, typically. Like, especially with these small waves, like it doesn't want to keep you in. And especially with even just a common pile, it wants to push you to one side or the other, and then your edges are constantly hooking up your boat's diamond shape, and is constantly just throwing you out. So, all right, so hell yeah. So I think I'm satisfied with this video. I would even watch it again, but probably not. I'm just happy with talking about the terminology, and hell yeah. And I got some ideas for the next session. All right, thanks for joining me. Hell yeah.